Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is Brian and Mr. Betcher for Breaking Down Security.
Hello. We've got a retro episode, right?
Is it a retro?
Just you and me?
Yeah, well, it is just you and me, yeah. Ms. Berlin is on vacation, so of course, we don't ask people to join us while they're on vacation. That ain't right. She's up in Cascadia, so she's up in my neighborhood. I think in Oregon. Yeah, she was.
That's a nice area. I went there last year.
That's right, you did.
I don't know about Cascadia, but
well, Cascadia is like the Oregon, Washington area. Would have been Canadian, except somebody got their the surveying instruments wrong or something, or some kind of treaty that changed the location from the 35th parallel to the 38th parallel or something like that. So
wow. Did you know Texas used to include part of Colorado? What is Colorado today?
Oh, you mean it had a second little panhandle leg thing that went up? Yeah,
it was like half of New Mexico and
right. Well, yeah, I don't know how they decided to draft the lines on the map to make everything like that, but it's just it's interesting how our U.S. states used to look back in the day, and then I heard a story about a fort that was up on the U.S.-Canadian border near Michigan or something like that, and for the longest time they thought it was U.S. and actually they had missurveyed the area or misplaced the lines, and it was actually a U.S. fort in Canada, and so they had to abandon it or something. Yeah, whoops. Yeah, my bad. We'll do better next time. Yeah. So,
you guys mind paying for the infrastructure here?
Yeah. Well, you guys can take it back rent free and take care of it. Yeah. No. So yeah, Ms. Berlin will be back hopefully next week with us after she gets back from vacation, and it's been a couple of weeks since we've actually done anything. The ASVS part 1 and part 2 took up the majority of our time in the last couple of weeks. Daniel Cuthbert and Jim Manico. What was your impressions of that interview, Mr. Betcher?
My impressions.
Yeah. I mean, what did you get out of it?
Quite a lot.
Wow, that's telling. That's telling. Yeah. I just, my whole thing was, it's good to codify, our processes. So, making sure that we can have some standardization. That way people can know if they've gotten, a crap pen test or, they've gotten a good pen test or whatever. And it also, I think, raises the minimum bar for, all the quote unquote, you've heard the term pen test puppy mills, but, they have to, if the company is wanting a certain type of pen test, you can't just, come in, run some Nmap and call it good. You're actually going to have to do some testing, do some possible threat modeling, find out what's going on under the hood before you begin testing. And I think the ASVS in this case actually kind of helps in that regard. So that's what I got out of it. So, yeah. So, before we get started, we just have, it's going to be a fairly light show this week because the last 4 or 5 weeks have been really heavy with interviews, so we're gonna play it a little light to the listener here this week. So some announcements. The last couple of weeks I've been mentioning WorkshopCon, the training there. SpecterOps folks and Tim Tomes is going to be giving some training, Red Team Operations class with the SpecterOps people. Practical Web Application Pen Testing with Tim Tomes. I've always heard great things about that class with Tim. So if you're interested in checking those out, you can go to www.workshopcon.com. They're not paying us for this. I feel like I should probably, if I'm doing advertisements, I probably should get paid for it, but yeah, that's all right. It's all good. So,
it's a, I don't know. It's like we're helping our listeners by telling them these things, right?
Yeah.
Other people are doing. Now I've never met Tim.
Yeah.
But his name shows up a lot. Oh yeah. In a lot of the things I read.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. The PWAPT or whatever, PWAPT, whatever, practical web application pen testing class. He gives that a lot of places. DerbyCon, I think he's given it a couple times. So, yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about it. And if you're a web app pen tester or something like that, it's definitely worth your time to go check that out. So that's in the Boston area. So just like Source Boston, Rob Shane, we've had him on the show a time or two when he was here at Source Seattle a few years ago. His conference is going on as well. They're giving trainings there as well. I'm not sure what the training schedule is. They've had things like Metasploit workshops with Rob Fuller. They've done threat modeling workshops with Robert Hurlbut. They've had some leadership conference trainings as well. So that's on April 29th and 30th for the trainings. And the conference is May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And if you're interested in going to Boston, Mass in April and May, which I bet is lovely this time of year, you can go to sourceconference.com/events/Boston19. So, hey, Mr. Betcher, what are you doing on 23rd of April?
I have no idea.
Well, you should go check. You should go check out the Cybernauts CTF meetup.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Cybernauts.
Yeah, Cybernauts. Yeah. I just learned about that one the other day. It was posted on our Slack, and
is that like part of the Space Force?
Maybe like cyber force or whatever. Yeah. The cybers. Yeah. So they do a CTF meetup at Austin at the Indeed offices. They're off the 2222 and 360, there.
Oh yeah. My son did a computer science competition there.
Oh, really? How do you do? Was that the one that just recently?
It was a few months ago.
Really? You got first place, huh?
4, 6. Yeah. It was the Indeed computer science competitive programming competition.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, so they sponsored that, and it was real nice. He got like this I don't know, funky little toy or device that he doesn't know what it is. Yeah. I think you put tea in it and you can dunk your tea in and brew tea with it, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
I have it in my backpack. If I'll take an image of it.
Yes, please, because I'd like to see what that is. Yeah.
It's kind of weird. And I tweeted out to Indeed to try and figure out what it was, and they never replied. So.
Oh, well, maybe they'll listen and figure that out. So, they're the Indeed offices. They call it their tech campus or whatever, 5 p.m. Central Time on 23rd of April. It goes to 11 p.m. at night. So they go through various online CTF challenges. So all skill levels are welcome. And apparently they do that the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month. So they have a link in the show notes if you want to go to that. So, all right. So we're going to do some news this week. First one we got, and this one kind of affects me because I'm, I have one of these. It's one of the finest IoT devices I have, called the Tesla. I have a Model 3. So, Sophos came out with this news story. Wrecked Teslas hang on to your unencrypted data. Of course, of course it does. But so the idea is they've had some security researchers get a junked Tesla, and they managed to gain access to things like unencrypted videos, phone books, calendar items, location, nav data. Somebody calling himself Green the Only retrieved all this information, and he's done it from Model S's, X's, and 3s purchased for testing and research from Salvage. So, the problem I've got with the privacy thing is it doesn't appear to be any kind of encryption on the system. So they said leaving data unencrypted on the car headed to the junkyard isn't consistent with how tight-fisted Tesla is with privacy under other circumstances. Well, let me ask you something, Mr. Betcher. What year is your car?
Which one?
Was it made? Do you have one that was made in this decade?
No.
Okay. So, poor example, but I had a 2010 hybrid from Ford, Ford Fusion. It was like the first or second generation of those. And, the first thing it did was I tethered to my phone to the entertainment console, and it asked me if it wanted to download my contacts on my in the car. I said yes, or at some point, I'm sure I did, but I mean, there are cars out there that are doing all kinds of stuff like that. I'm not sure why it's such a big deal that Tesla's doing it, but every car out there is going to be, holding that data at some point. I think it's just because Tesla's the new hotness that this is why it got as much attention as it has.
First of all, how did they get a junk Tesla? That's weird.
From salvage. I would hope that they are
like one had a wreck or something.
Yeah.
All right. So is this the? Now I read an article where it said that the researcher actually was able to take over the Tesla and run it into incoming traffic.
Yeah, that was the other one. I tended to not want to read that one, but I did end up reading that one. There's some invisible little stickers they put on the road, and Tesla can sense the stickers, and it recommends a lane change, and it does it for you if you're on autopilot, I believe. And you can't see the stickers. Apparently, visually they're not available, but they show up in the interface for Tesla, and it's like, oh, you need to move, which is funny because it's kind of scary. I use the autopilot a lot, auto navigation and such. Different parts of my commute, it does different things. Like it'll slow down for no reason, or it gets a little overzealous when it starts to see a car that might get into, onto the lines on the road lines when it's not in their own lane. And it tends to freak out a little bit, and it'll like slam on the brakes. So I'll be going, 60 mph or 100 kilometers an hour, and all of a sudden I'll slow down to 45 real quick, and my teeth are, in my steering wheel. So sometimes I end up having to turn it off because it's just being annoying as hell. Or there's parts like, for those of you in Seattle, if you're driving down the I-90 at the 405 interchange, there's an overpass that I always go under. And for some reason, when I'm in the carpool lane with my carpool buddy, the car slows down. Not sure why. Just wants to slow down. Mm-hmm. So it's not ready for prime time. I don't think the autopilot, that's why they call it in beta, but I've always got my hands on the wheel and all that stuff. I think a lot of these, like with the stickers that you were talking about, I think people have too much trust in systems right now. I mean, yeah, new hotness and everything, but they're still code. They're still made by people. There's still errors. They're still error prone. They're still working the bugs out.
Sure.
So
I would hate for it to sense something that's not real and then lock them up when somebody's trying to tailgate you.
Right.
That would be bad. But I'm thinking it's not going to be perfect until there are no human drivers out there where the cars can communicate with each other.
Yeah.
And they'll know, hey, what are you doing? Oh, I want to turn left right in front of you. Okay, well, let me slow down, things like that.
Yeah.
They can tell each other what they're going to do before they do it and make sure it's okay.
Yeah, I've always wondered if down the line Tesla's going to have some kind of telemetry where it's beaconing out, hey, I'm here, I take up this space, and then there'll have to be a standard with all the other cars because Nissan's got technology now like lane keeping and following cruise control and such like the Tesla has. Ironic how all that technology just showed up as soon as Tesla started making it mainstream. But there needs to be some kind of standard or something where cars are like, hey, there's no more blind spots at that point. It's, hey, you can't make this lane change because there's a car right there. There's another, there's a Tesla, there's a Nissan or a Hyundai or something. They use that data to determine what traffic patterns are like. So when they start communicating with each other, that's going to be ripe for hacking as well. Oh, absolutely. I mean,
you can say, hey, I'm actually going to cut in front of you and you have to slow down. Or you could say, well, I'm here, but you're not really there.
Right. Yep.
So,
you could trick the car into thinking
cars avoid you when you're not even there.
Yeah, or you could make the car believe that there's a car in front of it stopped, and then all of a sudden it slams on its brakes, causes people to right rear end you, or causes you damage or whiplash. There are all kinds of things, but that's why and I hate to go back to ASVS stuff, but that's why we need threat modeling. That's why we need proper testing of these things. That's why we need to make sure that people don't trust beta and alpha, brand new, autopilot type features in cars or whatever. Keep your hands on your wheels when you're doing so. But yeah, one of the things that I think Tesla should do, and I actually tweeted something out about Tesla the other day. They don't when they disable copy paste for their passwords as well on their website. So there's some additional security things they could implement even on their own websites. And there's no MFA. And for those of you who own a Tesla, the owner's portal can allow you to do certain things like, reserve another car if you'd want to, or, buy things and send it along, or, cancel reservations. So if somebody gains access to your portal and you have a reservation, you can cancel the reservation. So there's not horrendously awful, but, it's obvious that there's still some work that needs to be done on the Tesla systems and, the website.
What scares me about these cars nowadays is, like the steering wheel, it's not mechanical anymore. It's all electrical. It's almost like a PlayStation controller now.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of it's fly-by-wire. When you shift gears, you're not really shifting a physical transmission or 3 on the tree or 4 on the floor like you used to. I remember when I was a kid, my father had an old GM vehicle, and you could put your ear down onto the top of the stick shift, and you could hear the gears grinding in the transmission up through sound transference on the stick. Anyway, Tesla needs to, make it so that all that data is encrypted on the system, which, isn't hard. Encrypt at rest, or have a fuse or a kill switch or something. I would imagine, much like a cell phone, if you're, you can have a switch there or a fuse that can be blown, and that data, isn't available anymore to people who might, let's say you resell your car. If you don't factory reset all the data in your car, whoever's going to buy your car is going to also have all your contact information, where you've been, that kind of stuff. So having some kind of secure data storage area where videos are being stored, or nav data is being stored, nav history, contacts, that kind of stuff. And then having some way of, if you get into an accident where the airbag deploys, maybe it erases all the data in your system, for instance, or that wouldn't be too hard. That would be an event-based bit. So anyway, getting off my high horse here, but I really like Tesla. I really like my Model 3. It's very nice. It drives well. They don't pay me to say that. I'm sorry. It's like I sound like an Apple fanboy at this point, except with my freaking car. But And I know that they're taking all my information. That's why I don't even worry about it. But so, people are like, I can't believe it. You're an InfoSec and you have this car that does all this stuff. And I was like, well, I don't really prescribe to the idea that I've got privacy anymore after all the breaches we've had. So, anyway. So, Mr. Betcher, let's skip down to the planetary ransomware decryptor. This was from Bleeping Computer. So
now, I really like Bleeping Computer. They do a lot of good work on ransomware.
Yeah. Good write-ups. Yeah. This one's from Lawrence Abrams. So it says planetary ransomware decryptor gets your files back for free. Some place called EMSI Soft this week allows victims to decrypt files for free. This ransomware family is called Planetary because it commonly uses the names of planets for extensions added to encrypted files' names. Have you heard of this one? Have you seen this one?
No.
Oh.
Mira is one of them. I didn't know that was a planet. Sorry.
Yeah.
For all you astronomers out there.
Well, the .yum is not a planet necessarily either, unless it's short for something else.
But okay, so usually Bleeping Computer will do research on these ransomware variants, right, and see what they can do. I don't know whether they have cryptographers on staff or if they have guys there who are pretty good at it that do this for a hobby. I've looked at ransomware in the past, 6 months to see how these files are encrypted.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll use encrypted in air quotes because sometimes it's not encrypted. It's just obfuscated or encoded, if you will. And they used to be relatively easy to decrypt, right, or decode.
Mm-hmm. Now, why is that? Is that because they use not very good encryption schemes, or they don't, they try to roll their own encryption and it just doesn't work?
Sometimes they roll their own. Sometimes they just do the encoding because it's faster, or they don't do the encryption properly. They'll use or they won't code their software properly, so their encryption keys are there for the taking.
Right.
So you almost kind of have to hack the hackers, right? And get those keys. Sometimes you may be able to see the key in transit. There's a lot of ways that there's a lot of methods that they can use to find these keys or decrypt these files in whatever way. I've seen one that only encrypted the first, kilobyte of data in the file. So if you had a large file that had data in it, you could get back 99% of your data. It's just that first 100K or 1 meg that was encrypted. So it looked like to the casual observer that the whole file was encrypted when it wasn't. Right. And that sped up the encryption process on your computer. So it would go really fast. It didn't have to encrypt a whole lot of data. And that way it would finish what it was doing really fast. And it would say, or the idea behind it was that you couldn't stop it. You couldn't just unplug your computer, kill it or whatever, and save your data, that it would get more of it. Right. So,
right. So it sounds like that when people get some types of ransomware, like this planetary thing, I guess the first thing people do is they freak out and they go, well, how do I get my data back? Oh, I'll just pay somebody the ransom and get my files back. Whereas if they, employ people who can look at that stuff like you did and find out, well, it's only, affecting the first, 4 or 5 bytes of every file or every 100 kilobytes of the file, they may be able to figure out how to get their stuff back without having to pay an exorbitant amount of Bitcoin.
Yeah, or enough of it back.
Well, that's good to know. So I guess the first thing when you get ransomware is don't freak out too much. Don't panic. It can get better.
Well, yeah, you need to take a breather, take a step back, and look at your options. Don't panic, right? Because, for example, if a lot of companies have servers that all the space is taken up and they can't buy more space. But if you have, say, a workstation and you've got plenty of space, let's say you've got a 500 gig hard drive and you're only using 100 gig, well, there's a good chance that your data is still on there, because when you delete a file, it doesn't really delete the file.
Right.
It just deletes the address or the location of the file, and it creates, let's say you want to create a new file. Well, it creates that new file in empty space. Whereas the original data may still be there. So if you could analyze or get a forensics expert to analyze that, they may be able to recover a lot of files.
Cool.
Because it's still there. It's just you have to find it.
Right. They're
it's
just
not easy to find, but the data's still on the hard drive.
Right. They're modifying the headers or something at the beginning of the file to futz with it. It's almost the same like when you're using some kind of disk or data recovery tool, and you're just, like I've done before, I've accidentally, formatted a drive, and it was like, oh, do you want to recover the data? And then it's like, oh, here's a piece of a file, and this is where the EOF is for that file. Here's where the new one starts. Here's EOF, and then you save them. And if you can tell if it's a PDF, you can change it to a PDF or whatever. assuming you haven't done a secure wipe of the systems. So,
yeah.
Speaking of ransomware, and we've talked about this a couple months ago, city of Sammamish here in Washington had a ransomware attack. I'm sorry, while we were talking, Mr. Betcher, I apologize. Went to Sammamish's website to see if they'd updated their ransomware information hub. They haven't updated it since March 4th, ironically, which I don't know. It seems to me like they should be updating that semi-regularly to discuss, changes or issues that they've had. But it also reminded me that there was another city that fell in to a major ransomware issue too. City of Albany had a ransomware attack in New York.
Really?
Yeah, a couple of days ago. This article's from a couple of days ago. Let me post the link.
Okay.
When I remembered the ransomware stuff, then I got to thinking about Sammamish, and then I got to remembering that Albany had the same issue. Problem is, they appear to be keeping rather mum about what's been going on. They had a news conference. They said no personal information was taken. Of course, by the time everybody hears this, it's going to be a week later. So I'll probably have something around here with an update to anything that's been going on. They said, this Brian Nussbaum, assistant professor at the College of Emergency Preparedness, Homeland Security, and Cybersecurity. Wow, that's a big, long title for the college at the University of Albany. Ransomware is a tough problem because by the time you're infected, there's very little you can do about it, right? So you're really facing the question of paying the ransom or not paying the ransom. Well, yes. Wow. So they said Albany got a lucky break of sorts. The way the computer systems in the city was built up piece by piece kept the worst ransomware it could do at bay. So what it sounds like was they had a bunch of disparate systems that weren't properly connected together, and that actually did the LAN segmentation bit. So when the ransomware tried to laterally move through the environment, there's no lateral movement through the environment. So maybe inefficiency in city government is a good thing in this case.
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes that can help. I don't know. Maybe it cost just as much in inefficiency as it did saving in the ransomware attack, so it all evens out.
Yeah. Well, maybe the DMV didn't get hit, but maybe the licensing or whatever did. So
no data was taken, huh?
That's what they initially said. I mean, I don't know when exactly. Statement. Yeah, everybody says no data has been initially taken
because a lot of the attacks nowadays are hackers finding a way and looking around. And if you find them, if they realize that they've been discovered, right, and you shut off their front door, but you didn't shut off their back door,
right?
They will encrypt everything. Like it's throwing grenades over the wall as they leave, a scorched earth policy, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Oh crap, we've been found. Let's retreat and just blow everything up. Right. That's the MO that I've seen.
Yeah. A lot of times it's just a smash and grab kind of thing anyway, because they're just there for any information they can get unless they have, different designs. But
it's possible. And they could be in there for a year until you find them. And then, once someone discovers that they're there, they try to cut them off. They're unsuccessful at cutting them off. And then they ransom everything.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So they could be there for a long time trying to, it all comes down to money, right?
All right.
They're trying to monetize in any way they can.
Yep. According to the Albany Police Officers Union, because that, they posted on Facebook because that's where all important, communications needs to be stored and processed on Facebook. Officers could not access any service or program dependent on an internet connection, and computers aboard their patrol cars were affected. So yeah, whatever systems their patrol cars are using, probably some kind of Windows system, I would imagine. It definitely was affected. So they don't have the ability to dispatch police or fire to affected emergencies. The city payroll got caught up in the breach. They have informed their employees they will get paid, probably with a paper check. So yeah, it's a whole mess. I'm gonna keep up with this one because I'm sure that that's going to be important. Communication is very important during incidents. As a matter of fact, if everything goes to plan, we're going to have an interview next week with somebody we've had on the show a couple times talking about an incident that happened at his org. So we're looking forward to that if that all goes well. So yeah,
don't jinx it.
I know I shouldn't jinx it, but I have a lot of respect for him, so I'm hoping that we can get everything straightened out and happen. So that'll be cool. Let me see. Phoronix. Okay, one real quick thing. We talked about in a previous news story episode about Linux improving their CPU switches. So they've made it possible for you to add vulnerabilities to your kernel.
Wait, made it possible to add vulnerabilities?
Yeah, so improved Spectre and Meltdown switches might finally come to the Linux kernel. So on the kernel mailing list, they are specifying that there hasn't been a global kill switch to kill Spectre and Meltdown mitigations in one easy-to-add option. So they want to make it easier to turn off mitigations to secure against Spectre and Meltdown. So they're making it so it's possible to add security vulnerabilities to a kernel.
Okay. That makes sense.
No, it doesn't.
It is a open source language. I mean, why shouldn't you be able to customize it in that manner?
Yeah, right. Okay, let me put in.
If you need the performance.
No, I hear you. I hear you. I also want to enable, disable dirty cow protections too, or I want to disable, I want to create a custom bash and allow Heartbleed and stuff to go in because I really like to be able to do all the necessary bits I need to do. And
shell shock.
Yeah. Let's just put some shell shock mitigate. Turn off the mitigations for any shell shock vulnerabilities that we've got. It's a really slippery slope. I mean, somebody is going to get some research or find some way to make Spectre and Meltdown work over JavaScript. And if they haven't already, or something, like with Rowhammer or what have you. And, everybody's going to be, running the only good thing about this is it looks like it has to be a custom kernel. So if you are not running a custom kernel or your developers are, allowing, or if your environment allows for custom kernels, you really need to talk to your developers and you really need to sit down as an organization and find out if you want to allow these kind of switches to be allowed in your environment. I think, you can't just allow whoever's building your kernel for whatever application to turn these things on without you knowing about it.
Right.
Compile switches need to be documented so that way, one, everybody knows what everything's doing. If you're using 03 or 02 for optimization, 03 causes, if you guys are, min-maxing your kernel like a rules lawyer in an RPG game, then, you kind of need to know what's going on under the hood and understanding what impact the switches are having to your environment as a whole. So I'm sorry, that was my so they're adding this to not just 64-bit, but also ARM S390, and I think I saw one other in the mailing list. I want to say no, I said ARM. Okay, so yeah, I think it was ARM, x86, and 64-bit. I think those, and S390. I think those are the big ones they were looking at. So, but yeah. So. There you go. If you know, so the security people, blue team, and the if you know for a fact that they use custom kernels, you might want to go and find out what kind of switches your company's using to mitigate.
Yeah, and also know what kind of chip you have as well, because I would have to think that Intel has been working vigorously in trying to come up with a way to enhance the performance, the look aheads and things.
Sure.
Without being vulnerable to these Spectre and Meltdown.
Right.
So you may turn it off, but the turning of it off doesn't buy you anything because Intel, if it's on a new chip, may have already mitigated it.
Right. Right. And as we've talked before, that there are only certain applications that are affected by these by these Spectre and Meltdown mitigations, if they said, oh yeah, some of the vulnerabilities, there's a 40% degradation in performance or whatever, but if your application is not using whatever pieces of the kernel that's causing the performance hit, or if your code doesn't have to worry about the performance hit, you shouldn't be turning it off in the first place. And if you've got a person that's just, oh, I want to make a custom kernel and I don't want to have to, have this stuff on anyway, and you need to find out and make sure that these people actually know why and have a good justification for disabling those, because it will open vulnerabilities in your applications. I think we're going to see this in the long run, because IoT devices, for instance, you got a router, you got a switch, you got an Alexa-esque kind of thing. They turn these things off to get the performance boost. Nobody updates them, or they don't get updates. And then there's a problem that affects, a ton of Linux kernel IoT devices out there. Or, like I said, they found a way to weaponize Spectre and Meltdown to great effect. And now you've got, computers out there that are going to, have massive vulnerabilities and they can't fix them. And, that's my worry. That's what keeps me awake at night. So, anywho, all right. So you have a story, and I have a quick little comment about something. You were talking about an email that you'd gotten about some threat intelligence.
Well, it was, it was a guy using. He was in charge of security at his company, mm-hmm. and he really, really was all up into an EDR. In other words, he loved it. Mm-hmm. Right? He loved this product because one time it stopped this malware.
Right.
And he believed that no other product could have stopped this malware, and it saved him and saved the company, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. All right. And so when it came time to install something else, because the company as a whole decided that they were going to go to another product, right, and save some money, he kind of said, no, we can't do that because this product here saved our bacon, right? We need to continue with this. Uh-huh. And I just want to say that EDR products are all different. Some of them, each one does its own. Well, they can mitigate certain malware, and then another product, similar, a competitor, will mitigate something else. Right. And malware can be tailor-made to bypass a certain vendor. Right. If the hacker knows that the target uses that particular product. Right. So my point of this whole thing is, don't be don't put all your eggs in one basket and say that this particular product is the be all end all.
Yep.
Because you might get burned someday, and you may not know that all these products can be bypassed. Mm.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Well, that goes back to user requirements, doesn't it? I mean, you have to show justification for keeping the one you have, or, in this case, if it's a company that's coming in and they're like, oh, we've, I don't know if we've acquired you. In this case, I could definitely see something like this happening, where it's like, we've acquired you, you're going to use our technology stack, and it just happens to be an EDR that your company's not using. I would say at that point, you need to start creating some justifications of why you either need to keep yours, other than just, well, it saved us this one time with this one malware, or figure out how you can make the one that you're about to go to better. I mean, that's at least my opinion,
Right. Find out what made the product that you have better, and maybe apply those techniques to the new product, the one that's going to replace it.
Right. And
so don't be like we had this one. You remember when we worked together at that one place where our product was completely I don't know the word, married to a particular database system.
Oh yeah.
And the product 5 years before had been agnostic. So we could have chosen any database.
Really?
And it would have worked. Yeah. But since we had been using this one particular database for quite some time, and it just so happened that the DBA manager really, really liked the one we had and probably used to work for that company, we began implementing some custom, that particular database only queries. Right. To make our product, to enhance our product. And all of a sudden we got away from being database agnostic. We kind of let ourselves get bent over by the company that we were using.
Right.
And then we couldn't switch. And then they started charging a lot more for their product because they knew that we couldn't switch anymore after that.
Yeah. Okay.
So it cost the company millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, because they couldn't switch easily.
Right. Or, it was going to take a lot of development time to move over to a less agnostic or something just as difficult to maintain, but, on a different database system. So, yeah.
Yeah. So again, don't let yourself fall in the trap of not being vendor agnostic.
Right.
Because you need to be able to switch products when the time arises. Your particular vendor decides to double their prices because they got, Series B funding and they needed to pay their investors back. So the quickest way to do that is to charge more.
Yep.
Because their product was probably too cheap to begin with. And now they've doubled their prices. Now you can't switch because all of your processes, all of your people training, and all of your software was coupled deeply with that particular product.
Yeah, or they know they have you by the short and curlies, and they can charge whatever they want because you'll have to pay for it. A la every government contract I've ever seen to date. Anyway. So, very, very good, wise advice there, Mr. Betcher. I actually have a quick thing. If you receive, and you're in the IT or information security department, and somebody reports a phish and says, hey, I think this was a phish. What do you think? And they forward you the phishing email. Do not click on the links in the email and then attempt to log in with your credentials. That's all I want to say. Anyway.
That's great advice, by the way.
Yeah. Do not use your own administrative credentials in this case to log in to a splash page that may or may not be legit. Twice. I'm just saying.
Cool.
If anybody wants a longer story than that, they're going to have to buy me an adult beverage at a conference sometime. So, all right. I think we're done for the week. If you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, by the time this comes out, it will be the weekend of the 14th. So I'll probably have some kind of update somewhere in the podcast at this point. If any of the talks, discussions that we've talked about today get out an update. So anyway, Mr. Betcher, LogMD is going strong, yeah?
Yeah, we're about to release a new version. So,
you're busy.
Michael Goff is teaching in Oklahoma, or he will have taught in Oklahoma by the time this podcast goes out. So,
what's he teaching?
All his students are getting the latest version.
Oh,
yeah.
Is this B-Sides Oklahoma? What is
yes.
this? Okay. All right. Hey, what up, everybody? B-Sides Oklahoma. Anyway, so yeah, that's cool. How would people, who want the new version or are interested in what LogMD is, where would they find that at?
Well, they just have to type in a few characters in the browser address bar, log-md.com. Find out all the information there. We have, I just added VirusTotal Digest. So if you look up something in VirusTotal, it gets saved in a file, and you don't have to look it up again,
Very nice.
for another computer.
Oh,
when you
very
go
cool.
searching for things, when you go hunting, if you see a file, look it up in VirusTotal using the API. It does it automatically in an automated fashion, I guess, or you can do it manually if you want. And then it saves those results so that when you go to the next computer, it's cached in a file, and then the next one, then the next one. So if you do have something like, I don't know, you're thinking this organization or your organization has hackers in the environment, and you're trying to find out where the malware is that they're using, if they have backdoors or whatever, VirusTotal is a good resource. Right. Especially if you upload something and it's never seen it before.
Right.
Right. So you go looking computer to computer to computer, or a bunch of computers at the same time, and in an automated fashion, look things up that look suspicious in VirusTotal. You can verify that, this is nothing. It's a Windows file. No big deal. Mm-hmm. But if it's something that is either has been seen before and is malware, or has never been seen before, then that's a red flag that you should go look at.
Cool.
Right.
Okay.
And LogMD can help with that. So check it out.
Awesome. All right. So Ms. Berlin, she's doing the mental health hackers thing. So if you're interested in getting involved with that, it's Hackers Health, I think, on Twitter. And yes, Hackers Health on Twitter. You can also follow her on Twitter at INFOSYSTIR. That's InfoSister. Mr. Betcher, where are you at on Twitter?
At BetcherPwned.
Right on. And at IMFSec, IMF Security, which is the other one. I just saw that on log-md.com. So, if you're interested in getting involved in the BrakeSec community, we have a Slack, which is very active. You can join us over there. We do it by invitation. We don't, tell people they can't join us unless they're a bot and they fail my bot check, which is I ask, hey, are you a bot? And if they say, yes, I am, then I'll be like, no, you can't join. So far, everybody has said that they're not a bot.
I've sent a lot of people to the channel. They're like, well, who can help me with this? And I'm like, hey, just send Brake an email, join the channel. And there's lots of people there.
Right.
Who may have exactly the same question a year ago that you have now. Yep. And they already know the answer. So,
Yep. So we've got, not CTF Club. We're still trying to figure that one out. I don't know how we can make it useful in some respects, but we have resume review. We have book club. So we're still doing the Christopher Hadnaggy book with JB and with Dave Sybuck. Dave Sybuck runs the US-based one on Wednesday nights, and JB from his home in Arkansas does one on Saturday mornings for our European and Asia Pacific folks. So if you're interested in doing the book club, you can join our Slack by sending a DM on Twitter to @BrakeSec, which is also our official Twitter handle, or you can send an email to bds.podcast@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Brian Brake as well, and that's BRYANBRAKE. And we have a Patreon. I just looked up what all our supporters do and help us support with. We're listener supported, so they help us with monthly Libsyn hosting. We had to pay for the domain. We pay for Zoom. So every dollar that you guys send us every month is very helpful and is used to keep the podcast going. Time and effort. So that's all. Well appreciated by us. So if you're in, if you want to join and help out with that, you can get in our show notes. There's a link to our Patreon in there. We also have a store where you can go buy BrakeSec t-shirts. We get a little kickback from that. And Yeah, I think that's it. Ms. Berlin will be back next week. We're going to have an interview, hopefully, with our gentleman friend who will be joining us. And that was...
Don't miss it.
Yeah, don't miss it. It's definitely going to be worth the download because he's going to give us his play post-mortem of an incident that occurred at his org and what he did. And I thought it was very well done how it was handled. So, yeah, that was it for Breaking Down Security this week. Yeah, be nice to one another. Take care of yourselves because you're the only person you have. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Bye-bye.